of victory and the agony of defeat.
Great ball around the corner, Petticini. He beats them all. Junior Polar out wide, bumped away from Trindle. Sharks coming through. None of them can hold this.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to a live edition of the Tip Sheet Podcast here on a Sunday night in the wake of a round 3 victory over the St. George Illawarra Dragons. As always, I'm your host, John, also known as 4020. Joining me to break down the 30-20 point win over the Red V is my good mate, Sixties. Big fella, a lot to talk about. Plenty of good, plenty of bad. Going to be a lot of constructive criticism, I imagine, in this podcast. But unfortunately, some bad news too with the Eels. Looks like they've picked up a few pretty serious injuries, or at least one serious injury that we're sort of monitoring in the situations that sort of develops here. But I suppose, importantly, in the big picture, Parramatta improved to 2-1. So a lot to talk about, but how you doing, mate?
Well, you can see I'm busily getting myself organised for the podcast.
Yeah.
Not long got home, just had to set things up again and get everything ready. So, man, what a day. First of all, John, of course, a shout out to our sponsors, Star Partners Real Estate, Auburn, Narellan and Parramatta. Greg, hope you're watching now. He's a great supporter of ours almost since day dot. Greg from Star Partners, and we're so grateful to have him on board for all these years. And of course, Paraleagues, the home of the Eels, where we were earlier this afternoon with our preview from Sturlo's. And John, just got to say thanks to everyone that came up and said g'day.
You're
today.
A busy man today.
I was quite overwhelmed because had a few people, of course, saying g'day up in Sturlo's, but then walking to the ground, walking inside the ground, sitting down in the shade. It was just a procession of people coming over and saying g'day. And I'm trying to remember all of the names, but we had Justin come and said g'day. Dan came and said g'day. Ross, I think it was. And I'm really sorry, but they're like the other, everyone else. I was trying to write down names when I could remember in my phone to take notes, because this old 65-year-old brain it's hard enough to remember my own name, mate, so let alone the names of everyone that came up and said g'day. But we really appreciate it. We say it all the time that when people come up and say g'day and talk about the podcast and talk about Parramatta, and it just means so much to us. So thank you to everyone. And again, my apologies for all the people that I couldn't remember the names. But please know it was appreciated. John, what a day. What a day. Fortunately for us, we weren't over in the stadium for when the New South Wales Cup was on. Because
the one major blemish on an otherwise flawless weekend. Yeah.
It was the one blemish from a massive, massive weekend, because the Eels won 5 games on Saturday. That was both the boys and the girls academy teams, absolutely blitzing it. The girls still undefeated in the Lisa Viola Cup, and we're at round 7. It's a 9-round competition, so both teams are well positioned for finals football. Then we had the Jersey Flegg score in the last couple of minutes to get a victory over St. George. We had that blemish, as you said, with New South Wales Cup, but then we had that 20-10 victory in the NRL. And, mate, how good it feels to, first of all, be at a winning game. I mean, we were watching from Sturlo's last week when the Eels took down the Broncos. But to have it as a home game this week, we need to take every game at home, because if we can do what we did last week, which was grab 2 points away from home, 2 points against one of the grand finalists, and then back that up by winning the next week at home a game. We were expected to win, but games don't come easy this day and age, especially if you have certain referees that are in charge. And there were some interesting calls that were made out there today by our friend Mr. Klein. So to come away with the points, I'm really happy with it. Obviously, there's work that has to be done. Still, a lot of work, and we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about how they can possibly cover for injuries in worst-case scenarios. But still plenty of positives that we have to acknowledge, John. And before we get into the match itself, can I just congratulate the club on 99.9% of their match day presentation, from everything to do with the crowd activation, what was provided by the league's club before the game, the multicultural displays, the games for the kids, all of the food stalls and trucks that were there in the car park. Of course, everything within the club, including you and I with our preview. But then to go over to the ground, again, the activation with the fans, getting the fans involved, the only thing that went, and the MC did a great job as well. The only thing that was a blemish, the game's won, no team song.
Yes, no Quick Goes the Eels.
So I don't know if there was some sort of technical glitch or what have you, because we're all like looking around at each other going, where's our song? Where's our song? Everything had been done almost to perfection in today's presentation. So unfortunate, but I'm sure they'll get that right in the next home match.
If I recall correctly, there was a prominent letter writer that might have something to do this week.
Yes, maybe.
No, but let's talk about the game, mate. Obviously, well done to the club for 99.9% of a terrific home opener for the season. We're round 3 and it's a home opener, which is kind of crazy, but that's how it goes sometimes. But the Parramatta Eels prevailing 30-20 over the St. George Illawarra Dragons. This was a weird game, Craig. I don't think there's any other way to spin this. This was a real doozy. Both teams of players in the bin. Some controversial calls on both sides. The escort being a matter of emphasis for Ashley Klein. And to be fair to Klein, he was consistent in that regard. I'll give him that. There were penalties on both sides of the aisle there. But the Eels getting home in a torrid second half where they showed a lot of grit in their goal line defence, Craig. I think the scramble, they had one try conceded, which to be fair was an excellent grubber kick, playing on the one-man advantage, knowing that Azara Yongi would be committed to the front line of defence. But beyond that, I thought the Eels really showed a lot of ticker. Was it a pretty win? Was it a perfect win? In no way whatsoever. There's a lot to improve on for the Eels and fast, given who they play next week in the Penrith Panthers in a home away from home game there. But the important thing is that they go up to 2-1 in the season. They're now obviously ahead and 4 and against, which means regardless of what happens against Penrith, and obviously you're going to be aiming for the win, but regardless of what happens against the Panthers, you are 2-2 at worst now. And that's a great platform to have. So I don't know where you want to dive into this one, mate, because there's plenty of stuff to critique. Also, a fair bit of heart and good stuff there. And obviously, the bad news being that Jason Rolls, I believe in his presser, alluding towards a suspected ACL tear for Jermaine Hopgood. That was a hip drop tackle for one of the Couchman boys in the first half, I believe it was. And then there's also concerns about Jordan Samrani. He came off with a non-contact mechanism on the knee, Craig. I think there was talk in the presser that they're thinking meniscus initially, but they're going to await scans. But then if you watch the post-game team celebration, the Paras on Fire song, I think you see ice on the knees of Dory, Jack Williams, and a few other boys dinged up. So this was a physical battle. Regardless of where you stand in terms of the aesthetic value of the win, these two teams went to war today.
John, let's talk about the hip drop for a start. If we lose a player for the season, there should be a significant suspension coming the way of Couchman for that. Surely. And I'm not. This isn't a witch hunt, but we've lost players. Hayes Dunster virtually had his career ended.
Yep, and then
with a hip drop,
we lost Katonga for a third of the season last year, and that was was that even a suspension? Was it a 1-game suspension? Against Penrith?
There was no penalty. There was no penalty in the game.
Yeah.
It would have been a 1-game suspension afterwards. and he missed a third of the season. There's always an argument about whether you should have, whether the consequence should come into the penalty as it's awarded. The penalty as it's handed out at a judiciary. But you can't have someone that is potentially put out for a season and a player only getting a couple of weeks, because it's a case of the punishment not fitting the crime, but it's in this instance it's because the punishment isn't strong enough. So anyway, I feel pretty strongly about that, because I really that was a classic hip drop.
Yeah.
When you saw the replay,
regrip, drop down to the back of the legs, and then Hopgood is twisted as he drops on the back. Now, obviously, that wasn't his fault in terms of the hip drop or the hip dropper and Couchman there, but Hopgood is twisted as Couchman arrives on the back of the legs, which is what turns it from what was a suspected MCL mechanism, because the pressure on the outside of the knee like that is usually indicative of a MCL mechanism, but he was twisted, which then is what invoked the potential for it to be an ACL, which is the difference between maybe 8 weeks at worst on the sidelines to being a season ender. And for Hopgood, he enters a contract year next year coming off an ACL, and that's just terrible timing. Terrible timing.
Yeah, absolutely, John. Now look, there's plenty that I really do want to get into the positives. We can talk about the things that the team needs to work on, but I want to talk about the positives. Before I do that, let's just talk about how gassed both teams were today, because
there was no stoppages.
It was so obvious that they were struggling in the conditions, and it's not made easy by things like six again. And I know there was only, I can't believe it, but there was only 6 of those called today, because Klein went for a whole lot of penalties for St George rather than 6 agains. I thought they had more than one, but it's registered as 5-1, the Eels against the Dragons, and I think the penalties went 8-3 to the Dragons over Parramatta, and there was certainly a flood of them when the Eels were down to 12 players and the Dragons were getting set on set. And I mention this because this is, I think, one of the most important things that the Eels deserve praise for, and that was their resilience on the line.
Mm-hmm.
That period of defence where they were down to 12 men, and there was just all those repeat sets from penalties right on the line. And when they finally held out, that final tackle to get possession back, and Riley Smith, he couldn't help himself. He turned to the crowd behind him and he's like, yeah, come on.
Right at home.
Yeah. It was, and everyone around me just stood up and cheered. I gave them a standing ovation for that period of defence, because they really, really scrambled. And you can make an argument that St George botched opportunities, but when you've got the size of some of those players, like your Moses Sully and their outside backs are just...
Yeah, Sully, Leilua, even Setutu's a big lump for a senior young rookie. Tuapolotu's a big boy. So, yeah, they've got some big bodies they'll throw around. Jaden Sewer, all big units. So, yeah, the Dragons, look, they had their way in terms of the physicality in the early running. And then in that second half, they definitely tried to spot up some of their big men against the Parramatta little men. But Moses, whatever criticisms you may levy against him in terms of some offensive struggles, there was a hospital pass to Junior at one point that I'm sure he would like to have back. He was an absolute pit bull out there. He was cutting them down, and was just winning every. There was one run off a kick return, I think, where he got beaten, and beyond that, he was literally dominating in defense. So, well done to the captain there, leading by example during an absolute desperation period where the Eels were holding on for grim life, and he really led the way.
I think that was maybe the most physical that I'd seen Mitch Moses from a defence perspective in all the years. He's had some really brave physical matches in the past, but in terms of the number of one-on-one,
DOWG, yeah,
almost like bear hug tackles where he's thrown his entire body around the player and taken them to the ground. It was phenomenal. So, John, for our people in chat at the moment, maybe if they can start thinking about their 3-2-1s as well.
I saw before we even started the stream, someone put in a 3-2-1. So a few of them there. Chris Ricketts got an early. There was someone else there too, but I'm not sure if the chat goes back. Oh, no, it was Seb. There you go. Seb saw it. Yeah, so we got some 3-2-1s in there preemptively already. So everyone's fired up. Good to see. We
got Chris in there, have we?
We had Chris. Are you still here, Chris? But he got in there early while we were offline before the podcast started, and he's not to influence voting, but he went with Big Sam for 3, De Silva 2, and Walker for 1. Again, the bench featuring heavily, and that's not a surprise because, geez, they're making a difference for the Parramatta Eels, that 4-man battery they were getting off the interchange.
Yeah, well, let's, John, how about, first of all, just go through a couple of stats that are key stats, and then I'll get you to talk about what impressed you most about Parramatta.
Yeah, look, this was a decidedly even game, Craig. Perhaps unsurprisingly, given the swings and roundabouts sort of balanced out. But if you're looking at the actual team stats here, Eels winning by 10 points in a game where it was 50-50 possession split. Time of possession was within 14 seconds, slightly in favour of the Dragons, but still mirroring that 50-50 split. The two teams were above 75% completion rate, 76 for the Red V, 86 for the Eels, which is great to see. St. George slightly ahead in a lot of the in all the attacking stats really, but it's only marginally. 8 more runs. They had 160 more run meters. No, 55 more run meters. But they had 5 line breaks to 3, 40 tackle breaks to 35. All this stuff really evening out. Eels had the fast average play to ball speed, 3.28 to 3.5. So you saw two teams very evenly matched, but the Eels probably took better. Well, you can say they either took their opportunities better or defended better and denied the opportunities to St. George. 19 offloads for the Dragons to Parramatta 6. That is a bit of a surprise given that the Eels are usually the prolific offloaders or second phase pundits. But in this game, it was the Dragons throwing it around. So there's your key team stats, mate. In terms of the individual stats, there's a few players that really jump off the sheet here. In terms of tackles, I think both Riley Smith and Jack Williams topped 50. So fair effort there. Bally Simonson led the way for meterage, 244 on the ground. He had a great game. Was very, very busy. But then the one that really jumped out to me off the bench, and he's already featured in the top points for our good mate Chris Ricketts, but Sam Tuivasa. We've been banging the drums for him the last couple of weeks, and he's responded here with an 18 carry, 175 metre effort that also featured, I think, 27 tackles. So big game from young Sam there. In a game where the Eels needed someone to stand up around the ruck amidst all the injuries and all the carnage that was happening, he really picked up the banner and carried it through into the breach.
Yeah. John, in terms of the Eels bench, it was almost a case of I was thinking at one point I didn't want them to be changed. Like I was hoping they were just going to keep pushing it for as many minutes.
It felt like Jason Ryles rode Sam as long as he could this week. He really kept him out there. And I think, have they got the minutes updated on here? They've got Sam down for 45 minutes. So that was that's big minutes for an interchange forward. For an interchange middle forward, that is.
What about Junior? What'd you think? I thought maybe 55 might have been a bit too much.
Yeah.
For Junior.
Junior's we were actually having a quick chat about this in the green room before we went live, and I say a quick chat, literally less than 30 seconds. Junior for me had a mixed bag. There was some great ball playing involving him on the end of it, where he had the error in the first half. There are a couple of good runs, but yeah, it just not quite in rhythm right now. And I don't know if we need to talk about a transitional role, or we have literally alluded to maybe Ryles needing to tinker with the starting configuration, Craig. I don't know.
Yeah.
But 55 minutes is probably, again, this has been leveraged by some really difficult injury decisions that Jason Ryles had to deal with. Jordan Samrani going down and Jermaine Hawkwood going down meant that he had to use Charlie Geimer out in the centres, alongside some pretty crazy reshuffles in that initial rotation of forwards when Hoppy was just early into his stint and then had to be pulled out of the game. So I will, in terms of the coach, I will forgive the coach because this was chaos. There was carnage out there. He had to scramble to respond as opposed to trying to use a plan or dictate terms of his offensive strategy. But I think ideally, you can't be leveraging Junior for more than 50 minutes too often now, unless maybe at the midpoint of the season he's really got his feet underneath him and you can trust him a bit there. But I think with the rise of Sam, with the rise of Dory, and especially guys like Williams played 65 minutes to be fair, but Dylan Walker only had 41 minutes, and he was pivotal in that second stint as well. So I think you need to start finding a little bit more minutes across the balance of your other middle forwards, and then just bring juniors back so he can maybe have a bit more oomph to his play without having to worry about pacing himself as much.
You mentioned Dylan Walker there. What really stands out when you see how each stint unfolds is his footy IQ.
IQ and tempo. He knows when to go, and when to just, almost like Jason Smith, going back a few years now, just slow it down, just reset, just let our boys find their feet and then go at a different pace so they don't get too winded or blown out. So big game from Dill. He's been so good for the Eels and got a starting role this week, Craig. There was a bit of a pre-game reshuffle, and he did fine in the first stint. But maybe this was a sort of cognizant decision from Riles to hold him back as long as possible so he could really dominate that final stint when he came back in. Because when he did come back on, he completely took control of the game. Like over Mitchell Moses, over all the Dragons players, he was passing around the middle, he was running, he was telling guys where they needed to be, he was giving Moses the space needed to make a number of crucial clearing kicks. And you can't really envision the Eels winning that really, we talk about torrid and gritty and ugly final stanza where both teams are so desperate without the work of Dylan Walker.
I think there was one set that was getting into the closing stages of the game where I'm sure he went to first receiver 4 or 5 times in the set of 6. It was literally, as you said, he was orchestrating what was happening around the ruck and doing the job of the halves. And we know that the modern day lock plays that link role between the forwards and the backs, but I think he takes it that step further where he really does, as you said, even orchestrate the tempo of the game. And where you see some of his smarts are those occasions where he goes to the line with the ball in 2 hands, then just tucks it under the arm and takes the hit up himself. And he's not the biggest unit out there, but because he has the defence in 2 minds, when he does tuck the ball under the arm and run, he's getting probably 15 metres in a carry because he's almost dug right into the line before the defence knows whether he's going to pass or whether he's going to take it himself. So got a lot of time for him. The other player, and I don't know whether people have been mentioning this in chat at the moment, I thought Bailey Simonson had an outstanding game. And it's backed up by the stats where he's got 244 run metres, which is the most, I think, of any
on both sides
player there.
Yeah, 24 carries, 244 on the ground, 4 tackle breaks, and no, you can't say line breaks are stat patters because they're still huge offensive production, but he didn't get bolstered by a nice 40, 50 metre line break to pump those numbers up. That was all hard work.
95
PCM,
post-contact meters.
Headed off by Sam Tuivasa next at 76. So 2 of the players I think will feature in the points really leading the way in that regard. And you know what you love about Bailey is you don't see it too often in the modern game, but he's so good at the hit and spin at the first point of contact.
Yeah.
And it lets him fall forwards and win the ad line there. So he had a great game. Sean Russell had a really nice game too, did some tough work. That pickup and delivery to the Fox, what a crucial play.
That's footy IQ, John.
Yeah. And not easy to do too, to
turn in that moment.
Turn defense into offense and pick a ball up off your ankles and then thread the pass. So he had a good game. Iongi, he makes about half a dozen speckies and then drops the easy one at the end. But I thought Ice played pretty well in general, Craig. Didn't get as many attacking opportunities this week as he did against the Broncos, but still found a way to keep himself involved. So, look, there is a lot of positives out of this one. It's easy to get caught up in the negatives, and the Eels, gave away a 14-6 lead and had to again claw their way back into the game, up 18-16 was it? 18-14 at halftime, before making real tough sledding in the second half because of that Charlie Guymer sin bin. The mechanics of which could also be argued there too, because Mitchell Moses was fired up, Craig. I don't know if you caught this one. He wanted to challenge the initial ruck infringement that was caught against the Parramatta Eels. He felt that the Dragons had knocked on. I think he might have had a case, to be honest. But for whatever reason, Klein lets Little take the tap off the mark, by the way. It was about half a metre in front of where the actual indiscretion was. And then Geimer, unfortunately, reacted instinctively in the negative and was correctly put in the bin in that regard. Like, once the ball's been tapped and it's play on, Geimer has no right to touch him in an offside position. That was a fair call. But Moses wanted to have the ability to challenge that play, and that's always that grey area between quick taps and the ability to challenge plays and whatnot. But I'd be more upset about maybe the initial call being wrong. But that's... Look, I'm not going to be too harped about Ashley Kine. There was a missed forward pass that contributed to the Dragons scoring on Jonah Pezzett, which is a point we need to talk about, Craig, is Pezzett's defence is starting to be really becoming an issue here. But equally so, Pezzett was given a penalty try that I felt was probably more a sin bin. I don't think you could have argued in good faith that he's guaranteed the score that try or was in the balance of probability favour to score that try, but they said so. But the Dragons should have had a man in the bin instead. So pick your poison in that regard. Maybe the man in the bin would help the Eels more given the heat and the conditions out there. But yeah, that's some of the other interesting stats and sort of moments there too. I don't know where else you want to go. I mean, obviously Talon De Silva, maybe his best game as an Eel. Had a couple of tries, some crucial involvements, including a try assist to Kitiona Katonga. Was then rubbed out of the game from a shoulder charge that was missed, that I thought was pretty obvious, en route to nearly bagging his hattie. Look, Eels getting the job done. I think the important thing is that, again, this is a game that you can easily look to Parramatta in any number of recent years that maybe they do spill this game. A couple of tough calls, like tough calls both ways on both teams, don't get me wrong. But some tough calls, you have a guy in the bin. Dragons have the wind in the sail, wind in a wet sail as well in that second half. And yet it's the Eels that held on, and it's the Eels that didn't blink. It was St. George that blinked and gave the Eels the opportunity to put the game away with that Josh Adokar try. So I think it's an important character-building win, mate. Ugly wins count exactly the same as the pretty ones at any time of year, but especially at the early parts of the year when you're not going to remember how you won a game in September, looking back on March, April, May. And crucially, like I said, it's so important to get that second win banked ahead of the Penrith game because they are by far the benchmark of the competition right now. The Warriors playing good football, but Penrith look to be on a level above pretty much everyone else right now, including the Melbourne Storm, who I think are a little bit overrated because of what they did to us in round one. If you look at what Melbourne did against the Broncos, that was very ordinary.
Yeah, and really St. George fell away right at the end of the game against Melbourne, allowed them to put on some points which perhaps inflated their level of dominance that they had, because I think it was a far closer game than what the scoreboard showed against the Dragons last week. But as you said, they did a number on us and looked enormous in it. Didn't look so enormous against the Broncos. I guess this is early season form, John. It's like teams are struggling to find their identity in a way. You couldn't, for example, like last year, you couldn't compare the Eels at the start of the year to the Eels at the end of the year. It was a process of growth. You wonder how many teams are going to go through a process of growth this season, how many are maybe going to fall by the wayside the longer the season goes on. Without worrying about talking about other teams now, John, what's your take on how our halves are functioning? You just mentioned a moment ago you're concerned about Pezzett. I thought Moses was outstanding today.
Moses had a couple of moments in offense I think he'd like back, but defensively was brilliant and clearing kicks was brilliant. Defensively, Jonah Pezzett is an issue right now. I think I'll give some flowers to Kitiona Katonga, to getting Katonga for covering for him as much as he can. I think he's actually bailing out the half a little bit because teams are going after Pezzett and he's struggling. I don't think there's any way to sugarcoat that. Offensively, it's interesting because you've got two ball-dominant halves, like two guys that want to be the primary playmaker. And anecdotally, I can't speak to the numbers, and maybe Regular Guy Test or someone like that can run the numbers, but it does feel like we're playing heavily to our left shape alignment or left side alignment, and that takes the ball away from Moses. And not like he can't pop up on the left too, but we know Moses loves to play down the right because it's where he can execute his blindside plays the most and do a few other little tricks and plays from his kit bag there. But yeah, it does feel like there is a little bit of desync between the two halves right now. Like they are combining here and there, but I'm not sure if the Eels have the right balance in the playmaking stocks right now. And that could still be between Moses and Pezza. They could figure it out. But I do think Jonah's also got a different issue sort of hanging over him with the defense. Like you can't keep giving away tries and missed tackles.
Slightly more receipts for Pezzett today than Moses. I guess it was as close to 50-50 with receipts, but Pezzett slightly more, 52-47, the stat there. So one thing's for certain is that they're not shying away from giving Pezzett opportunities to shine in attack. It's, as you said, it's that targeting that's happening in defence, and we're getting the job done with the back rower beside him. But how much work is done there in coming weeks? I think there is a lot that still needs to be done. John, the thing that's I'm finding frustrating at the moment, and I'm sure the coaches must be frustrated as well, is the ball in the air, where we've struggled to diffuse the high kicks. Teams look like they're very much targeting us with the high ball and getting some joy from the tactic. I can assure you that the amount of time that's been spent on taking the high catches, working on taking it AFL style so that the ball's caught above the head so there's extra height in the catch. It's been there basically from day one of pre-season all the way through. They've used a whole range of different techniques to teach the skills, and it's probably just as frustrating for the coaches as it is for us as fans that when the ball is going up in the air, that we're really not confident what's going to happen. You mentioned Isaiah Iongi and some of those speckies that he's taking.
And then drops the simple one at the end.
Yeah. But it's, I don't know, every time that ball's going up, I've got my heart in my mouth because...
Yeah, the Fox had a drop in this one. The right edge, even though it didn't pay off, there was knock-ons from St. George in the mix of it. They were allowing contested catches. Yeah, look, it's like you said, they obviously train for it. It's just a matter of getting those training reps translated to game-day situations now, and they need to find a way to tidy it up because with the six again meta, with the current iteration of the game we're in, you cannot afford to be spotting any more ball to your opposition as it is because... and for those that weren't in attendance at, I was about to say Jack's, but Sterlo's today, Craig was leveraging some fantastic information from Rugby League eye test, talking about the impact of six agains and scoring opportunities, and that while I think, what was it, Craig, 13% did you say, or 16% was the initial one, of six agains? I think it was 13% of six agains are tied to tries in general. When you actually filter that to only tries themselves, 64% of tries, I think it is, come off the back of a set restart. So you cannot be spotting any more ball than necessary to your opposition because the way the game is right now, the ball will find its way to your opponent in streaks and gluts and runs. And that's what kills you when you... And again, probably speaks to some of the determination of the Eels in the second half, Craig, is that they had multiple sets, long runs of possession against them on the goal line. They actually held firm. So credit where credit is due in that regard. The Eels found a way to win and win ugly because they had to. It was tough out there.
Yeah, so you'll actually see these stats, not just the originals come from Rugby League eye test, and eye test does such great in-depth analysis of games and trends that are happening in Rugby League. I really recommend that. Goal quoted it in his match preview, and the actual stats were 17% of set restarts result in a try being scored, and 64% of all tries are coming after a set restart. So that was across the first two rounds.
Yeah, the second stat is the damning one because in the past we've seen teams being weak or vulnerable to a try from a penalty, but penalties at least gave the game a little bit of room to breathe. And we've gone so. I know there was a concern about penalties slowing the game down too much or whatnot, but we're going so far the other way now. It's touch football out there for a good portion of the game. And the fact that nearly 2/3 of all tries are coming on the back of a set restart, that should have the klaxons blaring out at NRL HQ saying we're going too far, but I don't think it does. So that's a separate issue.
John, have you got? I'll tell you what we haven't had across the first 2 weeks of the instant reactions. We haven't had to use "you cannot be serious."
God, I think I've still got it on the. I've still got it on the stinger here. If you want it, I can fire up the old. Let me blow the dust off the button.
You can't be serious, man. You cannot be serious.
Oh, luckily, I haven't got any allergies, mate.
I'm probably stretching it a bit, but the forward pass, the Dragons' second try. Who was the Dragons player that scored?
Jaden Sewer, I believe it was. Let me just check the
Sewer, right?
Yeah, it was Jaden Sewer. Yeah,
he was actually through the line when the ball was thrown to him.
That was a bad no call, mate. Like, what were all the officials looking at there? I don't know.
And then immediately after that, the Dragons made a line break, and one of the most diabolical forward passes was thrown, and Klein was letting it play on until he got a call from one of his side officials. That it was, and it was the level of absurdity of the forward pass. So we won. I don't want to talk too much about Ashley Klein.
Look, on the balance of things, that wasn't a bad Klein game, mate. When you can only complain about a few forward passes and a missed knock on here or there, you've gotten off very lightly. Just take the money and run, mate.
I think our tension in the stand was maybe rising as that run of penalties was happening, and then the Eels managed to hold on. But that was a tough run there where he managed to put the player in the bin and Charlie Geimer in the bin, and then the run of penalties right on the try line. It was it was a tough period. I must admit there was some expletives I was thinking I was going to use. But no, I'm not that sort of person, John. Not on a podcast, but people who've sat near me in the stands know what sort of expletives might come out of my mouth from time to time. Anyway, look, let's get into. I think this can probably be almost a short and sweet instant reaction, John, because I really want to get into the 3-2-1s to throw the praise at the players. So, how about we hear from the chat for any 3-2-1s that are there, and then we'll go with ours.
All right, so let me get back. So we heard Chris's at the start, which was Big Sam, Talon De Silva, and Dylan Walker. HM for Matt Duris, who's gone for the full repertoire of regulation bench forwards because, of course, Charlie Geimer was activated on the back of foul play. So the Eels did have access to a 5-man bench this week. Then we had Seb going with Williams for 3, Sam Tuivasa for 2, and then Talon De Silva for 1. And that was before we were live, so credit to those boys for getting nice and early. Well done. And then you put the call out to chat to raise arms and put their votes in, so we just scroll back down. Here we go. So we've started off with Jim going Iongi 3, Moses 2, Guffo 1. I don't know if you caught it, Craig, but Guffo had a couple errors in a row, one off a Moses chip kick, and Moses' face lit up when he saw that Gufferson had made the error because he knew he'd be able to razz him. And then I don't know if you caught it, but Guffo had the 2 monged up fingers, double dislocation at one point on the fingers there. So he was in the wars today. Big Ficus with the numbers there. 3 for Tui, 2 for Talon De Silva, 1 for Riley. Then we got Zed Kuki saying that Talon had his best game for Para, which I agree was fantastic. Fred Rankin saying 3 for Yongi, 2 for Talon, 1 for Moses. Neil going 3 for Talon, 2 for Big Sam, 1 for Moses. Adam Kirkland saying 3 for Talon, 2 for Moses, 1 for Williams. So we got a bit of a pattern coming out here, mate. Mark Johnston saying 3 for Riley, 2 for Walker, 1 for Dooley. Sorry, Matty. Josh, good to see you in chat, mate. 3 for Talon, 2 for Sam, and 1 for Bailey. Bit of love for Bailey there. Like to see that one. Then we got Seabass, 3 for Big Sammy, 2 for Talon, 1 for Moses. Kristen going 3 for Talon, 2 for Yongi, 1 for Smith. Joel's got 3 for Klein, 2 for Sewer, 1 for Sui. Nice cheeky votes there, Joel. Kick saying 3 for Yongi, 2 for Moses, 1 for Sam. Phil, 3 for Williams, 2 for Dury, 1 for Talon. And then Big HM for Bailey Simonson for his kick returns. Then we got Alan Jennings, 3 for Talon, 2 for Sam, and then 1 for Jordan Sam running for his defence. Unfortunately, Big Jordan not finishing the game, and we're still waiting to see what the clarifications in that injury. So it's going to be a nervous wait for all involved. GM going 3 for Yongi, 2 for De Silva, 1 for Sam, and then Matt's here with 3 for Tuivasa, 2 for De Silva, 1 for Williams. And I think that is the end of the 3-2-1s, unless there's any in the live portion of the chat. So I can scroll back down to... No, we got more. Damien, 3 for Dylan Walker, 2 for Talon De Silva, 1 for Moses. Jamie, 3 for Talon, 2 for Walker, 1 split amongst Simonson and Rusty. Patrick going 3 for Talon, 2 for the Kit Kat. He had a good game, Katonga. 1 for Walker. Ben from the Electric Podcast, 3 for Sammy. Keep out with the rest of them, Ben, we got a chance. Scott Whitney saying 3 for De Silva, 2 for Pezzett, 1 for Kelmer. And then, yeah, if Ben gets his 2-1 in there, we'll probably close off the voting there. Where does that take you, mate? Where do you sort of lean in your inclination for your 3-2-1?
Listening to all of that as well, John, it almost clouds the thinking, because every time someone's mentioned, you go, oh, yeah, they played really well. And I still, you know what, I had a little bit of a change of thought, especially when there was the mention of Jack Williams, because he really did some tough yards, and I think he made something like about 50 tackles.
Yes,
as well.
Let me tell you, he's credited for, where is Jack? 50, yeah. Had a few missed, but not in his own in that regard. But 50 tackles is always a fair effort, and he also managed to bang out nearly 100 metres off 10 carries.
Yeah, and Riley Smith as well, 50 tackles. It's the defensive load that was there, and given that Talon had enough game time to get those votes, like 3-point votes, and yet he split the game time with Riley, and Riley's made 50 tackles in that. I have to look very quickly at the game time, because I'm curious.
You pull up that. We've got a few more late votes trickling in. Ben got his 2-1 in, so he's gone 2 for Talon, 1 for Williams. But before that, I think Peters got in with 3 for Bowie, 2 for Sam, 1 for Yongi. Sonic Boom going 3 for Sam, 2 for Talon, and I'll wait for your 1 as well, mate. And then let me see. Dave Calgaro's gone 3 for Simonson. Got some trickle votes coming in. It's like South Australia yesterday, mate. Just doing the polling percentile by percentile right now. Need the big green board behind me. And in this district here, we've got 3 points for Talon De Silva. Waiting to come in. I think it's 2 points for Sam Tuivasa. Just confirming 2 points for Sam Tuivasa. As the Parramatta Eels take the majority of the votes.
So this is where I think Talon had his best game for Parramatta as well. I'm finding it amazing that he's pulled so many 3-point votes. He played 22 minutes.
Such an impactful 22 minutes, though, wasn't it? Like, he really turned the tide for the Eels.
That's the level. Yeah. I'm not questioning people voting for that. I'm just saying that's how much of an impact he made, that he only played 22 minutes, and he's forefront in a lot of people's minds about making that point of difference to the team. And I'm thinking that it's interesting what Riles is working for, because I'm sure that his plan with the 2 dummy halves is that he's got one who's going to be a real workhorse and do all those little 1%ers, the putting kick pressure on, just chasing everything, making tackle on tackle on tackle. And then you've got the other one who's got abundant speed out of dummy half and can take advantage of a tiring defence line. And maybe that sort of minutes breakup, I'm thinking maybe around what he probably would have liked to have done would have been more like, say, 50-30 or 45-35.
That seems to be 50-30 sort of like the magic number, the golden rectangle of ratios, the time there. With like obviously allowances in a given game to go plus minus 5, even like either side, right? But yeah, I think that's probably about it. And just in this game, it so happened that he had a dominant 22 minutes and then was smashed in a shoulder charge that was missed initially. what I thought was a pretty obvious shoulder charge live, but it came out like 5 minutes later that that Holmes was being put on report instead of being a penalty for the Eels. But yeah, look, it was just great to see that Talon, that his instincts were in alignment today. Like they were just in the right place at the right time. He had a couple of nice runs. I will say that I thought his try under the post was a bit soft from St. George, but he picked out Luciano Leilua. He saw his man. That's the guy, if you're going to talk about, potentially lazy defenders in that St. George lineup. Leilua was one of the primary candidates. So he saw his guy and had a crack, fair enough. But lovely ball to Katonga to put him over. That was a crucial go-ahead try there. So yeah, I can see why Talon's featuring in the points. And speaking of, I saw, was it Dave? Dave gave Talon 2 points and then closed out his points of Walker. A lot of the bench boys featuring here. And then Sonic Boom also giving Walker his 1 point there too. BG77 saying Walker, Talon, and then Simonson and Moses for the 3-2.5.5. We got Brad saying 3 for Moses, 2 for Talon, 1 for Walker. saying 3 for Walker, 2 for Moses, 1 for Bowie. So yeah, like it's a good spread of players, and like again, some of those guys could be. The haircuts are getting a lot of commentary, Craig. It's I've got the I'm getting a good. It's a good razzing and chat. I respect it. It's good fun. But yeah, no, it just got a bit too much. I had to get the shears out just for clarity there. I was in the shopping centre doing some TCT stuff. I was at the bank trying to fix up a few things for us, mate, and then I was like, oh, might as well get the clippers in there. I think the young, and I say young as a late 30-year-old, the young Phil actually gave me the fade line there as well. I didn't ask for it, but I'm pretty certain there's a little fade line above the ear there. So we'll have to keep that as a surprise to the podcast for another day. But yeah, look,
so John,
guts result, mate.
Just backtrack. I went 3 for Williams, 3 for Jack Williams.
3 for Jack Williams. I like it. The bench has given us so much, mate. Like, we're just not winning these games without the bench. And I think I might be his biggest fanboy out there, and that's saying something given he's got some fanboys and he's a big unit himself. But I got to go for Sam Tuivasa. Again, like, not like he listens to podcasts and takes what we're saying on board, but we threw the challenge down to him, saying that this is now his time to prove that Jason Riles, he deserves to be put into maybe a starting consideration. And he responded with his best career numbers, I'm pretty certain. 180 metres and 27 tackles in the scorching Sunday heat in a game where the Eels were on the back foot for a good portion of the time he was on the field. And he's just out there winning the ruck. And what more can you ask from a young bull? He's doing exactly what you want. And if anything, he's probably leading the way for some of the senior forwards in terms of, I know you want to offload if you're looking at someone like Junior, and I know you want a ball play, but let the running dictate the passing and the offloading. And I think that's what Sam's doing right now.
Yeah, I've gone for 2 points to Mitch Moses because I just think that we would have struggled to win that game without some of his one-on-one tackles today. So surprisingly, I've got him that high in terms of best on field for his defensive role more than his attacking role.
Yeah.
And obviously his kicking game was crucial as well. But I have to, like, the number of times where I thought we're in trouble here, and then he's bringing the player down one-on-one. And his communication around that, because he was dealing with the side of the ruck where you had Charlie Geimer playing at centre. And they sort of swapped around their positioning so that he was playing outside of Charlie at times in the defensive role. But just the way he talked the players around him, you could see it as there was a bit of a slide that would be happening. You could see him talking and communicating to the players around him what they needed to do. So I thought he was outstanding. John, your 2 points.
2 points. 2 points, 2 points. Let's try and look at some numbers here. I mean, it's hard to ignore Bowie's production on the ground. He had a fantastic game.
Yep.
And then obviously Talon Da Silva, great. Matt Dury for the 8 carries, 72 meters.
Oh.
Not sparkling numbers off the sheet, right? But the impact of each of those carries was dynamic. He was winning the ad line every time, getting the fast play of the ball. Dragons really struggled to contain him. There's another parallel universe where he scores 2 tries because of his line running and whole busting ability in this game. Look, I'll keep it simple. Let's go Bailey Simonson. I can't really ignore that kind of production, mate, in a game where the Eels needed every metre they could get because the Dragons pack was really aiming up for a good portion of this game. 244 metres and 24 carries is a huge effort. And it's easy to sort of get lost in some of the glamour of the other stats and the impact of some other players, but that's an incredible platform to lay from your back three to help the forward pack in a game where they needed as much help as they could get with the injuries.
Yeah, John, I'm going to cheat because I have to
split points. Yeah,
I have to split the point between Bailey Simonson, because I mentioned those meters that he ran. I thought he was outstanding today, and Sam Torvaiti, because again, he's bringing that impact. With every game, he's making a claim to being a starting player, and maybe he doesn't need to be because of the level of impact that he brings when he comes in off the bench, that it gives us that impetus at a time when maybe some teams might drop a little bit when they bring on one of their interchange players. We lift a notch when Sam comes on. So
it's that delicate balance too, because we always preach the importance of the bench, don't we? Like, you can't just go saying great bench forward, put him into the starting roster, and then not consider what you lose as an opportunity cost from starting him as opposed to throwing him into the game with fresh legs. But I think that there are opportunities for the Eels to explore for other players' potential off the bench too, because even if you do move Sam, you still get the likes of Matt Doherty, Dylan Walker if he's on the bench in a given week, and then someone else in that configuration, whether it's Junior or Jack Williams or whoever. I don't know who you're going to be benching. But, yeah, Sam is he's on the rise. And I think you want more on his plate, not less at this point. Because there is that, we talked about it last year, Jason Ryall's doing a great job of nurturing the rookie through a difficult, not difficult for the team, difficult for a rookie season. It's always hard. You're going to hit a wall. That's just how it works. No matter how good you are, you hit a wall at some point. It's true for coaches. It's true for rookies, players. And he did a good job managing Sam in that regard. So didn't let his plate get too full in 2025. I think you need to start heaping the plate up. Let the boy eat. And I think, we're going to find out again how good this kid is throughout this year, because the early signs are, wow, yeah. I mean, look what he did today, and look what he did last week. So big things there. 1 point for me. Look, you mentioned that he did as much as possibly could in 22 minutes. I'll just keep it simple. Talon De Silva. And then the honourable mentions, Mitchell Moses, Dylan Walker. The Fox had a pretty good game as well, 211 metres. And I know 50 or so that was from that late try he scored of the Sean Russell brilliance. But he got heavily involved in a couple of really important carries during some tough periods, doing a great job of almost baiting the defence, like sucking them in and then keeping them engaged to let players get back on side and also while moving the ruck there. So, it's...
John, I can't believe I've done a 3-2-1 and I couldn't find any points for Talon De Silva. I couldn't find any points for Matt Doherty. I couldn't find any points for Riley Smith. I couldn't find any points for Dylan Walker. It's a measure of, I guess, the balance of the performances that we saw today, that we had this spread of points from our listeners, our viewers that are there in chat, and their 3-2-1s that they've given, and us struggling to limit the 3-2-1s and throwing honourable mentions around, like people might throw around some $5 notes at a men's club. So it's been, I guess that's maybe a measure of how pleased we were with aspects of the Eels game. We know definitely there's work that needs to be done on other parts of Parramatta's performance.
They're going to get a hell of a tune-up next week as well, because it doesn't get any harder than Penrith. So
it does not.
Maybe that's what they need. Maybe they need the challenge of Penrith to give them a real high bar to aim for. And you know what? Eels and Penrith, I know it was a big feature of Brad Arthur's time here, but even with Jason Ryles at the helm. I think that the matchup is a good one. I think that the Panthers, they are the best. Regardless of last year's grand final results, they are still the best. And the Eels, they tend to aim up against that. And there's a good rivalry between the Western Sydney Derby now. And yeah, there's Penrith, they are by far the competition frontrunners right now. So the Eels will find out a lot about themselves in that home away from home game on Saturday, isn't it? It's a super Saturday.
Yeah, it's a 6-day turnaround, so reasonably quick turnaround. Not sure how many training sessions they'll get in. We know they'll do a captain's run on Friday. It's then whether they go Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, or just go. And given that they played today, Tuesday would only be 1 day break between game and training.
And with potentially a few injuries
I'm thinking it might be Wednesday, Friday.
Short turnaround, and they might have to install two new players as well because, almost certainly two new players because we know Hopgood's gone, and even if it's a best case scenario for Samrani, you're going to be looking at least a while on the sideline. So one change to the back line, one change to the pack, it's not ideal. And then that sort of speaks towards the other issue, which I think we'll talk about on the Tuesday podcast, Craig, because that's the better platform for it. But O'Neill and the recruitment committee are going to have to be very aggressive now. Down 2 players potentially in your top 30, including the unit that you can't afford to have too many players missing in the back line. It's what can they conjure? What can they cook up, mate? Because the Eels probably need some reinforcements now.
Yeah, absolutely. John, I think that just about wraps things up. Don't forget, people, that we've got goals grades will be landing, I would say, probably tomorrow. If not tomorrow, then early Tuesday morning. Then all of our usual content as it comes in. Make sure that you let your mates know about the Cumberland throw. It's obviously where we've got a lot of people that enjoy what we do because we have a lot of people come up and say g'day at the footy and at the club. And we, as I said, we really love that. It's been a great weekend for Parramatta Eels results. 6 out of the 7 games going our way. We're getting to the business end of junior rep, so stick with us in our coverage of junior rep footy in that regard. I think we've got a bit of a clash coming up this weekend, John, with the Panthers game on the Saturday and the junior reps coverage as well. So we'll have to see how we
do the logistics on that one there. What is it? SG Ball playing at 4:00 at Eric Tweedale. Yeah. And then
that's a bit of that's a nasty clash. Unfortunately, there's not too much we can do about that. That's going to be SG Ball clashing with NRL. Unfortunately, we know which is going to take the precedence with that. So anyway, John, what a day. Great atmosphere. 25,500 people there at CommBank Stadium. You know they're going to come back for more. The team left us all proud. So thank you to everyone that went to the game today. Thank you to everyone that's there in chat and watching us live. Thank you, John, for getting this up and ready to go so quickly after full time. Only one thing to say, mate. Proud, go you mighty Eels.